So I think I should get stuck in. However, it would be helpful if you're not asking a question to pop yourself on mute. Otherwise, we get like a bit of feedback, and it could be a little bit difficult to manage. Wonderful, thank you. Really appreciate that. So introductions. My name's Brad, and I'm head of data science and creative technology. I work across Mission Made and Mission Labs, but you could just think of it as Mission Advantage. After all, these are Mission Advantage sessions. My background is as a developer, so for a long time I built sort of websites and apps and stuff like that. For a long time also, I ran the digital team at PRAHA, helping the developers, build better code and everything else. And then about 5 years ago, I spent some time learning machine learning. So long before we were all chatting about GPT, and we've had some notable successes in this space. And off the back of that, I've recently taken a role to lead on this topic, at Mission Advantage, Mission Labs, Mission Made. So my message today is hopefully it's going to be inspiring and empowering. The idea is, we can do this stuff. And we just need to be brave enough to sort of do it. So my hope is that this session can be like somewhat interactive. So I'll jump into slides in a minute, but I'm really eager to answer questions as they come up and as they go along, because we're going to move at quite a fast pace and we're going to cover quite a lot of ground. And actually, it may be difficult to come back to a topic if we've passed by. So if you do have any questions in the moment, then click the raise hand button. We can get you off mute, and we can answer those questions, and everyone can sort of benefit from that. Sound good? Cool. Right, I'm going to start sharing my screen. 1 second. There you go, Eleni. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, it works.
Fantastic. Thank you. Brilliant. So these are the things that we'll cover today, and you would have seen this outline in the invite, but just to repeat, we're going to talk about AI applications that are changing marketing. We've got 3 case studies, all of things that we've made. And it may be a surprise to you that we've made any AI systems. I know that even at PRAHA, it was a surprise to some of my colleagues when I brought these things up, because of course, unless you're in the project, you're not going to know the details of these things. So we'll talk about marketing spend optimization, we'll talk about a generative social campaign, and we'll talk about a live events engagement. These are all but PwC are award-winning projects, and PwC happened so recently we just haven't had enough time to have been awarded for it, and I'm optimistic we'll get something for that. We'll then talk about working better and doing better work. So we'll do a quick tour of like the cutting edge of AI as it stands, and hopefully there are some inspiring examples of really creative uses of AI, really practical uses of AI. Then we'll talk about watch outs. We're spending a lot of time sort of giving advice and making sure that everybody has confidence in working with and building AI. So we'll talk about data protection, intellectual property ethics, and then the environmental considerations. And then we'll start looking forward and talking about what's coming. We'll touch on what the major developments in the coming months will be, and we'll discuss a little bit about why they matter. The key takeaways, though, before we get started, are we can build award-winning AIs. We have done before, we will do again, and this is a capability that I hope every mission agency can benefit from. We're also here to support you in using AIs, right? So my message isn't, we want to build everything. The effective use of existing AIs is just as valuable as establishing new ones. And then finally, we've got a proven strategy for continuing to innovate in this space. And we'll touch on this briefly in this session, but we'll go through this in depth in the next session. How do you compete with, or how do you stand out from companies that have billions of dollars at their disposal when it comes to the application of this technology? So the first case study I've got for you is our oldest. We started with machine learning about 5 years ago. This is a project from sort of 2018 going into 2019. We used healthcare data, we used weather data to create a model that can predict whether a particular area in the country is suffering from a cough outbreak. And this was driven by a very simple, I want to say request, it was more like a demand, a very simple demand from our client at the time, which is, why can't we just find people that have got coughs and put ads under their noses? And in 2019, not a lot of people were talking about AI or machine learning, right? So this was a really bold move for this brand. And, I'm so grateful that they were brave enough to sort of go for this. So we built a model that can predict we called it the cough status of one of 12 cities across the UK up to 2 weeks in advance. And what this allowed us to do is optimize the marketing spend around those cities. So in this example, you can see that everywhere south of Birmingham doesn't have any coughs occurring. So we just disable the ad campaigns in there. So we're able to massively reduce ad spending wastage by doing this. So YouTube and Facebook ad spend went down. We're also able to increase year-on-year sales, and we were able to outperform the rest of the market. And this, I think, is as close to sort of magic as you can get in marketing, because we were simultaneously able to grow our market share whilst reducing our spend, which really is the dream when it comes to sort of campaigns like this. This is the result of like really good knowledge of like the market, of our products, and a bit of bravery on our client side. The next one is a generative art campaign. So this project started in August of last year. This is when we had the idea, and we delivered it in time for October of the same year. If you consider the timing, Midjourney and DALL-E had only launched in the June and July of this year. So what we did is we created an AI that was able to make its own street art. So it studied a data set of thousands of images that we selected of what we think is the sort of best examples of street art. And after a process of like analyzing and reviewing all of those images, our AI was able to create street art itself. So if you see in the bottom left, we've got this grid of amazing sort of typographical street art. You can almost imagine seeing these images on the side of a train, or on a wall, or whatever else. These were actually our AI generated ones, and on the right is a piece of street art that we commissioned from a famous artist from Prague, or pair of artists from Prague. We put both examples up on social media, and we got really strong engagement by asking people which one's made by AI. And of course, it's quite clear to see which one's made by AI, because the AI one doesn't have a particular subject or theme, but is able to produce stuff that looks strikingly like street art. So we're able to do this generative art campaign at a time where generative AI was only just making the news, because we had been studying the area for such a long time, and were able to produce a very specialized algorithm that did one thing very well, rather than trying to do everything. In our next talk, we will talk about how Midjourney and Stable Diffusion are trained, and how those projects cost tens and sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars to run. And of course, this was a very small social media campaign from a sort of a fairly small agency, versus the size of these amazing tech companies. So we're able to do this for tens of thousands of pounds rather than millions of pounds. Last Friday, we heard that it's a 2 times Creative Pool award winner. So it got bronze in digital, and it got the People's Choice in the innovation category. So we're super pleased about that, and these are our first awards that we've been given in the area of generative AI. And just so you can see, this is a snapshot from part of the way through the project. of the AI imagining street art. So it was taking some time to think about different forms and colors and themes, and you could just about see, I don't know, sometimes some faces, but otherwise some, bold colors and forms and textures coming through as this thing permutates. So yeah, it's a little freaky, but it's a rare opportunity to see an AI imagining things, which is something we don't often get a chance to see. And then the last example we've got is for PwC. So earlier this year, PwC were at the Cannes Lion Festival of Creativity, and they wanted an engagement that demonstrated their sort of AI nous in an entertaining and engaging way. So we decided to build a generative photo booth. So you would turn up to the stand, we would take a few photos of you, and the AI would imagine you as artwork. So you can see here, if you know Bray Leno well, you'll probably recognise some of the people in these images. But these are people rendered as art from Bray Leno. So I'm in the top left. I think they're all watercolors or classical style paintings. These look nothing like the images that went in there, right? We had trained an AI to completely reimagine these people, and it's easy to think that this is just filters, but actually this is training a big AI, an entirely new concept. So in this case, it's Patrick or myself or Reese or Lou being learned by an AI, and then being taught how to recreate that person with completely different styles and everything else. We were amazed by the uptake of this. We had 500 people queuing up over 3 days at what was an exclusive event. So we're super impressed by how people responded to this. PwC love it. They're eager to run it for other events. And this concept of training an AI to imagine new things is a technique that we're going to be using sort of quite heavily in the future, I imagine, because a lot of the leading AIs, things like Midjourney and Stable Diffusion, they know the Eiffel Tower, they know the Pope, they know the style of Van Gogh, but they don't know us, they don't know our clients, they don't know their brands. So being able to teach a big AI, us, our clients, and our brands, is something that we see as being, hugely full of potential in the future. So before we move on from examples, I want to introduce a model of thinking about AIs called X to Y. Now we're all used to typing into ChatGPT and getting answers out of it. And that's an example of a text-to-text system. So you put text in and text comes out. And if you think about Midjourney, the image generator, you put text in and images come out. So that's a text-to-image system. So what we're going to do is we're going to explore different permutations of X to Y, but it's a really great model for seeing what might come in the future. Because some people, for example, are already doing research around text to video. So rather than just getting snapshots out of an AI, you get like a little clip of video. Some people are doing images to 3D. So you can take a photo of something, and then the AI will imagine a 3D version of that thing. So these are sort of nascent, sort of developing capabilities, but they are areas where there's sort of rapid improvement, and developments in these areas could lead to big breakthroughs that can completely change the way that we do particular types of work. So I think the most popularized form, particularly around agencies at the moment, is text to image. We've all been captivated by this idea that you can just type a few words into an AI and get an amazing image out of it. So this burger obviously doesn't exist. This is a burger that's a result of someone going to Midjourney, typing a very specific thing in, and getting an image out of it. So this cloud doesn't exist. This young man in a photo shop, in a flower shop, doesn't exist. This woman doesn't exist. This woman in a bakery doesn't exist. None of these people exist. None of these scenes exist. None of these photos exist. And the level that we're able to get from these AIs now is astoundingly rich. If you know how to prompt it, you can get something that that isn't just an asset that could be used in campaign. You can get like a really heroic piece of content out of these systems if you know them well enough. And these are the results of like enormous sort of developments. So you can see here that less than 10 years ago, AIs were barely able to generate like a grainy looking face. That rapidly improved from 2014 to 2018, where you can see, a realistic render of a person that doesn't exist. This was featured on a research website called "This Person Does Not Exist," and was a result of research from NVIDIA, one of the great graphics chip makers. And then you can see from 2019 to 2023, we're getting ever greater fidelity, but we're also getting more abstract results. So you've got a kangaroo in 22 and a sloth in 23. Again, entirely synthetic images that are generated by an AI. What's particularly interesting to me, though, is when you move on from text to image and you start thinking about image to image. Now, a lot of these capabilities are tricky to pull off, and the interface for some of them isn't that accessible. However, I think you'll agree when you see some of the results, it may be worth the effort to do some of these things. So the first one is image variations. So on the left is an image that was generated by an AI with a very specific prompt about subject and style and everything else. And on the right are 4 further examples that were created not by putting a prompt into a system, but uploading an image and asking the AI, make new images like that. And you can see that thematically they all match, stylistically they all match, the subject matches, but they've all got different qualities because they've all been rendered, completely from scratch again. And this is really useful for one of those moments where you've got a pretty good image coming out, but you would like to see, as we say, variations of them, or you would like to see slightly different versions, or the version you got isn't quite it, and if you sort of rolled it a few more times, you might get the perfect version. One thing that's worth noting, though, is that this is also quite a dangerous function. Some people have used it to upload copyrighted material and get like a new version that is sufficiently different from the original to be judged a different piece of content. We recommend you don't do that because that is that's probably a violation of the intellectual property of the individual or organization you got the image from. The next one is called in-painting. So with in-painting, you take an existing image, you highlight an area, and then you give another prompt, and then it fills that in. So think of this as the opposite of the magic eraser. So rather than magically getting rid of stuff in an image, you can magically add stuff to an image. So in this case, someone has selected the bottom left corner of this poolside image and added the text, add a flamingo beside the pool. And you can see here that we've got 4 different versions of that same output. And the render's pretty good. You can see in 3 of them, there's a pretty accurate reflection of the flamingo in the sort of marbled surface beneath which the flamingo is sitting. So you can see it's a good render, also in the sense that it's retained all of the detail around it, right? So it's not completely reimagined the image; it's only reimagined that section. So you can see the sofa in the background is still intact, and the sunlight coming in from the window on the right is still present as well. Next is outpaintings. This is the Vermeer painting, A Girl with the Pearl Earring. What you can do is you can select the area around an image and get the AI to imagine the rest of the image. So you can see this is a completely, other than the central area, which was the original painting, this is a completely AI imagined surrounding of the girl with the pearl earring. So you can see it's rendered the rest of her body in proportion and with the right style and anatomically correct. And then it's rendered an imagined environment around her with lots of interesting features. And again, stylistically in line with what the original painting looked like. I do think it's a little strange that it's imagined a young woman in what looks like a messy kitchen, I think that's probably a bit of bias on the part of the AI for doing that, particularly when you consider the original crop is so tight. This person could be literally anywhere, and for some reason it's imagined her in a domestic setting, which is a little bit disappointing. But besides that, it's still an impossibly interesting capability to be able to imagine what sits outside the bounds of an image. And this doesn't just work with paintings. This doesn't just work with like abstract and stylized things. It can work with real renders of things as well. So if you took a photo where the composition is like just off, and actually it'll be helpful to imagine what's outside of the frame, then you can get an AI to fill in the rest of the frame, maybe make it the right aspect ratio, or do whatever you need to do without necessarily cropping the image in. The next, and this is where it gets really wild, is what we call a control net. So control net allows you to combine an image prompt with like a geometric constraint. So it doesn't take a lot to realize that this image very closely adheres to a grid. So you can see the car occupies one square on the grid, the back of the building occupies another, the tree yet another, and then finally the cloud at the top of the center of the image is another square on that grid. And it's slightly mesmerizing because it really engages your sort of sense of perspective. And actually, outside of the fact that it's rendered on a grid, you can see it's a really nice and well portrayed illustration of some alpine, alpine town. It looks like somewhere in Switzerland, doesn't it? And this has been done, against many different shapes and many different patterns. So you can see this is a spiral. And again, each individual section of the image looks perfectly well rendered, but actually as a whole, it's got this quite sort of hypnotic quality. So you can see there's a gap in the street where the people are walking, and that gap serves the purpose of drawing the eye in what would be a lighter area of this spiral that's been rendered. Yet another example. This one's of a grid, and you can see here that it's an oil painting style rendering, so you can really see that quality in the clouds. But what the artist has decided to do on this one is use this technique to create an animation. So you can see the checkerboard spins, and each frame in this animation is a completely distinct image, with the checkerboard in a subtly different position. I think this is an incredible use of this technology, and a really creative thing that wouldn't be impossible, but it would be like hugely time consuming and very difficult, and perhaps difficult to even conceive because of the nature of producing stuff like this. One amazing extreme of this is using this geometry constraint to create QR codes. So every one of the images, all 8 of the images you see here, are fully working QR codes, even though some of them are so abstract that they're barely even recognizable as such. So you can see here this example of an ancient Japanese village. Because of the panels in each corner, is just about recognizable as a QR code. And if you pointed your phone at that today, that would work. So you could easily imagine how these sort of geometric constraints can be used to do really interesting and engaging things. So I can imagine, for example, a piece of interactive packaging being made of this, where you prompt the system to create a scene that is evocative of the brand, but central to that scene is a fully working QR code that is unobtrusive, but fully functioning. Another example of image to image is it's actually what we did with the PwC thing. So this is what we call the dream booth technique. So we've got some pictures of Dylan here. Fairly innocuous selfies. We've not put him in his studio. It's not required us to do a specialist shoot. It's just a couple of sort of candid, straightforward selfies. And the renders we get out of it are incredible. So the first one is Dylan imagined as a marble statue. I imagine everybody might want to see themselves as a marble statue. It's sort of quite ego satisfying, isn't it? Then in the middle is him as a comic character. So you can see you've got these sort of brilliant line details in his shirt and in his beard that really speak to an intricate illustration. And then finally, a more sort of loose painted illustration. So again, if you look at his shirt, you've got these fantastic brush marks and strokes that are quite broad, and then there's a lot of detail in his face and in his beard. So this technique again, can be used for things other than people. It could be used to, portray our clients' products, our clients' brands, our clients themselves, if need be. So next is text to text. So text to text has been popularized by ChatGPT. Obviously, there are other models out there, but ChatGPT is been in the headlines for how widely it's used, not without controversy. There are lots of people talking about how you might, I don't know, cheat on a paper at university using it, or how you might get in trouble for using it at work because sometimes it makes stuff up and everything else. We think ChatGPT is best used when it's combined with like a very specific goal. So, of course, you can use ChatGPT to look up, I don't know, what the height of the Eiffel Tower is, or I don't know, what year ABBA originally broke up, or whatever else. But where it's more interesting is when you give it a task that requires a bit more reasoning. So in this one, I imagined Bray Leno, the mission agency, has decided they want to do a viral TikTok campaign. So generate me 5 examples for an integrated communications agency. So the ones they suggest, and by the way, it gives a bit more detail than this. It's just it doesn't all fit on their screen. One is, what does 24 hours of Bray Leno really look like? #agency live. So it suggests doing a behind the scenes where it starts early in the day. You see people, filing in and starting their early day work. You see lots of energetic collaboration throughout the day, and then you see people flocking out in the evening, satisfied that they've, spent a good day improving sort of the world of our client. Then there's Bray Leno's Ultimate Ad Challenge. Can you top this? So in this instance, it suggests that we portray a brainstorm where we come up with a strapline for a client, and that we invite people to compete with us and create their own. Bray Leno through the ages. What campaign is your favourite? This is an interesting one because Bray Leno recently celebrated their 50th anniversary, and we did something very similar internally within the agency. So they suggest that we do a TikTok campaign that takes people back to the 70s, 80s, 90s, and demonstrate all the brilliant work that we've done over the years. The chaos before the perfect ad. Wait until the end. So this is a behind the scenes sort of production version. So you see you see all of the, I don't know, rigging and studio work and everything else that has to be done, and then eventually you see this beautifully polished ad at the end. And then ever wonder how we make a magic ad? So this is more about the creative process. So how we find a good idea and how we execute it. And finally, GPT gives us this brilliant little bit of advice, which is that TikTok thrives on genuine content and spontaneity. So although it's given us some ideas for some campaigns, it's suggesting actually, being genuine and spontaneous is probably the best thing to do on TikTok. So this was a very simple prompt. But it got us some great results, and I can see, maybe 1 or 2 of these actually working. So, even if the results aren't perfect, even if the results are just, the equivalent of someone just throwing ideas out there as part of a brainstorm, it's a pretty good result from pretty low effort on our part here. The next example is list common challenges faced by an e-fluids buyer at an electric vehicle OEM. So I've deliberately picked something super technical here because a lot of our clients are super technical clients, are in the B2B space, in the vehicle space and everything else. So it lists here, and again, the original output had a lot more detail. Specification compliance, compatibility concerns, thermal management, dielectric properties, logistics and storage, innovation and technical advancements, and lots more. And actually, these really line up with the experience I've had talking about these solutions with our clients over the years. So it's great to see that it's almost there, and it's given me, without a huge amount of effort, some insight into the challenges that our customers and clients face. Next is generate an AIDA for an exfoliating daily face wash. So we market Freedom, and these are some attention, interest, desire, and action prompts that could be used against a face wash. So for attention, it says, is your face feeling dull and tired, buried under layers of everyday grime? So in this instance, it's picked up the fact that it's exfoliating, and it's used that in its response. Discover the revitalizing power of our exfoliating daily wash, it goes on to say, for interest. For desire, it says, imagine feeling a feeling of rejuvenated skin and a sensation of softness after each wash. So imagine a feeling of rejuvenated skin is actually kind of in line with what we say about Freedom, which is, the freedom to be yourself and to be spot free and to have the confidence that goes along with that. And then finally, don't let your skin wait any longer. Bring back the glow and say goodbye to dull skin, it says. Now, a lot of this isn't necessarily in the tone of our client, and I don't think we'd really use any of this, but it's great to see that it's able to understand the concept of an AIDA, and write to that format with very little prompting, really. All I've said is it's an exfoliating daily wash, and it's gone off and done sort of quite a lot of work for me. Finally, on ChatGPT, it's worth investigating the custom instructions function that's recently launched in it. So custom instructions allows you to give extra information about GPT to allow it to give consistent results. So one thing I know that aggravates people about ChatGPT is its sort of Americanized point of view and tone of voice. So what some people do here is say, we are British English and we speak a particular way and we use particular idioms and have a particular worldview, and that greatly improves the output that's coming out. So what I would recommend is, if you're going to use GPT regularly, enable custom instructions and put instructions around what your role is, what your level of experience is, and what your goals are generally when you're using the system. And you'll find you get much better results, and you don't have to correct it nearly as much as you would do otherwise. A really great application where text to text becomes really interesting is where you start applying it to very specific domains. So this is an illustration of a program called GitHub Copilot. GitHub Copilot allows you to have a coding assistant. So when I'm writing computer code, I can describe what I want, and it will generate the valid code for me by getting some idea of what code is already written and what platform I'm using and everything else. I found this to be hugely beneficial. I think I save between 15 and 20% of my time on any given project. And it's a massive boost for me if I'm dealing with a coding language I'm unfamiliar with, or if I'm dealing with a domain that is unfamiliar to me. So I've been using this for about a year now, and it's been a real boost for AI projects that I've been doing where I've been dealing with unfamiliar territory. It's used by the Mission Made team. The Braille Digital team are going to be adopting it. My advice is, if you're writing any code, then please badger your manager and get permission to use this, because it's a huge boost. It's not without limitations. It's kind of like having an enthusiastic but slightly less experienced colleague writing code for you, so occasionally you have to correct it, and you have to be really clear about what you want from it. But once you get the hang of it, it's an incredible boost. And the good news is similar functionality is coming to Office soon. So in this case, it asks the AI to draft a product announcement based on a press release. So you can see here that it's going off and writing all the words and formatting it for you. You've got options to keep, adjust, or try again. In this instance, it's create me a PowerPoint slide. based on that same press release. So you can see here it's formatting things. And then finally, it's saying, analyze this data. So which product is most profitable for this quarter? And it will go off and generate some charts and bits and pieces for you. This is an emerging function that's coming to Office. Obviously, it's hugely valuable to Microsoft and to the businesses that are using it. I'm really pleased to announce that we're going to be doing a limited trial of this. We're going to be taking some time to pick some, particularly time poor people, and get them to, apply this tech to their workflow and see if it really delivers on what's promised, and see if it's something that could be used sort of more widely across our agencies. And then finally, we've got a hypothetical, which is what about a GPT model that's expertise isn't coding and isn't Office, but actually one of our clients? And this is something that we gave a talk on and something that we demoed for one of our clients, Leno, a client called Infinium, who are an industrial additives company. We were really, really pleased with the results. I wish I could demo it now, but I don't have the time, unfortunately. And it's something that the client's wowed by, and something that we're gonna try and roll out in a limited way for them soon. So, if you've ever thought, wouldn't it be great if we had a GPT-4? I don't know. The rules of medicines regulation, or the market for facial cleansers, or the market for electric vehicles, or whatever else it is, then we can help you get there and get there quickly. And we're embedding these sort of knowledge-based chat systems in lots of interesting ways. The Mission Made team are doing some experimentation about how we can improve search on websites by using this very same tech. Regards the wider landscape, frankly, it's too big to chart in one talk. You could do, video to 3D, you could do text to audio, you could do image to text. I mean, there are so many different permutations of it, and each of them are developing, in complementary but sort of independent ways. So I can imagine there are going to be huge boosts to workflow going forwards by, for example, doing text to 3D, so we don't have to model something by hand. We just have to describe what we want, and then a 3D model will sort of pop out of it. They're all going to develop at different paces, and there will be breakthroughs of different kinds as we go. But it's terribly exciting to think that there's a lot more of this to come in lots of new and interesting ways. Finally, I know we've focused quite a lot on generative AI as part of this talk, but one really good one is around data. So what can we get from data? And if you're interested in what can we get from data, then our second session will be worth joining, because we talk a little bit more in detail about how data becomes a model and becomes usable because of that. So it wouldn't be a balanced talk about the future of AI without talking about some watch-outs, because of course these are all amazing abilities, but just jumping in and using them isn't necessarily wise, because there are some substantial risks involved in using them. So the first one is data protection, and I'm so sorry to be talking about data protection in what should be like an inspiring and an enthusing session, but the reality is we need to be mindful of where we enter data. And this isn't just AIs, by the way, this is any system. We just need to be really, really clear that if someone else is hosting a system and we're putting data into it, that is an exchange of data that may be subject to regulatory rules. So even if it's just a quick chat, or just a quick search, or a trial, or I don't know what, even if it just feels like the most off-the-cuff thing, you need to be aware that by putting data into another system, that might be subject to rules. And that's in part because the vendors that build AI systems see value in data. And they probably see value in data beyond what we do, and therefore they're going to very aggressively sort of retain and reuse any data that goes into their systems, unless they say otherwise. So it's worth bearing in mind, would a client be happy knowing that you shared this data and it's being reused for others to benefit from? One brilliant example is YouTube. So a lot of brands use YouTube to host their videos because it's free and because it's easy. However, the viewing of those videos gives a really good indication about people's intent. So if we have videos about our exfoliating face cream on YouTube, but we're not running ads on it, people viewing those videos are a really good indication that they need a face wash. But because there are no ads for our brand, it means that our competitors' brands videos get shown instead, or ads get shown instead. And that's a really great example of be careful where you put your data. It's really important to be mindful of client intellectual property here. So their brand, their images, their product shots, and so on. Others' intellectual properties. So if we've licensed an image, putting it into an AI is probably a big no-no. And then the biggest one to watch out by a long way is personally identifiable data or information. So anything that might identify an individual or a group of people is super, super risky to be putting into AI systems that we don't have full control over. So my advice here is, if in doubt, don't. Now we've got more advice coming along these lines anyway, so don't worry. This advice is more to make sure that you feel comfortable that you won't accidentally do the wrong thing. And there are systems where we are actually okay with you putting some of this information because we know we've got good contracts with them, that they've got good terms of service, that they've got good levels of security and everything else. But unless said otherwise, if in doubt, don't. Next is intellectual property. So there's this enormous debate at the moment about how AIs are trained and whether original content creators are getting the recognition that they deserve, and the ethics around AIs that are trained on the information that's sort of widely available on the internet. My advice on this is try not to get bogged down in it, because at the end of the day, it is not our responsibility if someone else has trained an AI on intellectual property that they don't have license for, right? And if there is a big case, and if there is found to be, a big intellectual property breach, then that is the responsibility of the platform vendors, not the end users. The worst thing that will happen is the platform will shut down. They're not going to go after the end users of these platforms because there's no offence caused there. It is worth asking yourself the question when you're using an AI, particularly if you're using image to image, as we've suggested. Do you own the input? Do you own the thing that's going into the AI? In many cases, you don't. So it's worth just bearing that in mind. And then finally, each AI system has its own terms, and some of them don't actually allow you to own the output. So Midjourney, for example, doesn't allow you to own outright the output from that, and that might be something that some clients have a problem with. And finally, just be wary that, I suppose be aware that what you put into AI systems, so the flow that you go through to get the results that you want, including the prompts that you write, is valuable, right? And a prompt, so the words that you put into an AI to generate an image, is a form of intellectual property. So although we don't own the image that's come out of it, we do own the words that have gone into it. And that is something that's worth bearing in mind when you're having a conversation with a client about the value of the work that's being done with AI. Because there's value in being able to write words that make an AI do exactly what you want it to. Ethics are worth bearing in mind. This is from a famously failed BuzzFeed post from a couple of months ago when everyone was talking about Barbie. This is a post they did about Barbie as different ethnicities. This is German Barbie, and someone observed that looks awfully like an SS uniform. So they've sort of inadvertently gone and created a Nazi Barbie, which I know wasn't their intention. But it just proves that these AI models can sometimes be quite badly flawed. So all AIs are flawed in one way or another. And if you join my next session, you'll be able to see some illustrations of those. A lot of them contain bias. These could be political, racial, cultural, class, and biases that we haven't even imagined necessarily. A lot of these biases come from problem framing. So asking the wrong question or asking the right question the wrong way. Some of it comes from what we call training. So in order to get a machine to learn, you have to supply it with data, and that data, may have bias built into it. It's also worth bearing in mind that AIs can hallucinate. So when you're talking to ChatGPT, sometimes it will just make stuff up. So ChatGPT knows who Bray Leno are, but it's convinced that David Morgan, Bray Leno's founder, is dead. And I can't convince it otherwise. It's just totally convinced. He's alive and kicking. He was at Bray Leno's 50th anniversary recently, but for whatever reason, ChatGPT is convinced that he's dead. So it's worth bearing in mind that reputable AI vendors actually research and disclose their AI product flaws. So they will actually say, this product is found to be biased in these ways, or this product has been found to not know this, or, to have flaws in its knowledge. So if you use ChatGPT and you ask it a probing question about current affairs, it will literally tell you, I'm sorry, I was trained, with data going up to 2021 or 2022 or whenever it was. So if it's reputable, it's going to publish its flaws. Finally, on watch out, it's worth knowing the environmental cost of AIs, and this isn't something that's discussed nearly enough. They can be incredibly power hungry. They tend to require specialist chips, and these specialist chips require a lot of energy to run. They require a lot of energy to cool, and therefore their carbon cost is very high. So even a modest AI machine are about 30 times more powerful than a typical MacBook Pro. And that training big models can be ruinously expensive. So training GPT-3, the old version of GPT that isn't as good as the current version, was the equivalent of 1,000 flights between New York and San Francisco. Some people have estimated that the electricity cost alone for training GPT is millions and millions of dollars, which is wild when you come to think of it. There are mitigating techniques. There is such a thing as low carbon ML. It's an emerging area of research, and it's an area of research that we have a view on, and something we'll be discussing in our next session. So after all of that, we've taken stock of the work that we've done, of the cutting edge. We've talked a little bit about the risks and how to mitigate them. Let's think about what's coming. So first is, if you look at all of the AI image generation systems, you're going to see big improvements in the coming years in both fidelity and resolution. So Midjourney has improved enormously in the last year or so, and you can see it with those amazing pictures of, the boy in the flower shop and the burger and, the woman in the bakery and everything else. So we're going to see that continue. And hopefully, it means that we can get a level of fidelity and resolution that makes these, much more than assets. As I say, they could be key parts of a particular campaign. Maybe they could be used in print, whatever. Next is what I like to call promptability. So if you have spent any time working with the likes of Midjourney, you'll find that you almost have to talk in code to make it work well. And I think that's going to improve. I think your ability to say something and get good results is going to be a key area of improvement in the coming sort of months in particular. I imagine DALL-E 3, which is going to launch soon, is going to have much better promptability than anything we've seen before, because it will be loosely based around GPT-4, which we know is a very robust language model. We're going to see text to audio and text to video really take off. So Meta recently launched an amazing text to audio system that allows you to say, I want to hear, the sound of a cityscape. I want to hear music along a particular theme or whatever else. It'll go off and generate that for you. And then I think we're going to see text to video really take off in the next couple of years. I think there are lots of industry applications for text to video. I could imagine we might do a TV ad one day that is, entirely text to video based, which I think would be a tremendous breakthrough. We're going to hear a lot about multimodal as well. So GPT is super popular, and it's going to get even more popular because you're going to be able to put images in it, you're going to be able to put data files in it and get good results out of it, as well as just putting words in it. And then finally, there's going to be a big push from a lot of companies to enrich their products with AI to boost productivity and user experience. So I imagine Siri, for example, next year is going to talk a lot more like GPT. Obviously, we've seen the improvements that are coming in Office. We're going to see pretty much every major product enriched in some way using AI to help boost the user experience. And finally, the big theme that you're going to hear about in the next year is what we call interactive AI. Now, it might be difficult to imagine how we benefit from this because generative AI feels so relevant to the marketing and communications industry. But interactive AI is going to be huge in the next sort of year or so. It's going to be a big area of investment. There are going to be lots of startups doing interesting things. OpenAI going to write extensively about it. I imagine Google and others are going to write about it as well. But the idea behind interactive AI is it's AIs that can work with the real world. So Google recently did a demo of an AI phoning a restaurant and making a reservation. And navigating a conversation with somebody that didn't speak particularly good English as part of that process, and it worked brilliantly. And that's just a small example of what interactive AIs will be able to do in the future. So back to my original takeaways. First is we can build award-winning AIs. So you've seen 2 examples of award-winning and 1 example of a future award-winning AI across different disciplines, both generative and data analysis. These are things that we built, these are things that we're proud of, and things that really improve things for our clients. We're also here to support you in using AI. So we've given demonstrations of like cutting edge AIs and cutting edge uses of cutting edge AIs. And we're here to help make that happen. So to give you advice, give you inspiration, and really help you make the very best of what's out there. And then finally, we have a proven strategy for continuing to innovate in this space. So this is a big part of the session we're doing later on, which is how do you keep up with teams that have multi-billion-dollar budgets in this space. So what next? If you want to go deeper, if you want to see how machines learn, then consider the next session. Bear in mind, the next session isn't to make an AI expert out of everybody. It's just to give you a view enough for you to be able to make smart decisions around making AIs as well as using AIs. And then finally, if you have any wouldn't it be great if questions, AIs that you've seen or ideas you've had with clients that you think you can solve using these techniques, then please come and talk to me or a member of the Mission Made, Mission Labs, Mission Advantage teams. So Angela Brailsford, Matt Ishwood, anybody that in the group that has some AI knowledge, I'm sure it will quickly get to me, and we'll be able to work together on making something great. So that's it. That's for me. Thank you for the 82 people that have hung on. I thought there'll be 6 people left, my 6 biggest fans hanging on, but no, it sounds like you've all stuck to the very end, which is amazing. Does anyone have any questions? I appreciate no questions came through as we were going. Is there any topic you feel like we've missed, or anything you've wanted to ask about AI that you've not had a chance to ask up until this point?
There is one question, Brad, on
sorry,
the chat.
did I miss one?
And
Excuse me.
there is one which I think everyone would like to ask. Is a hot question here. Where does this all lead, and how will AI be part of our lives in a couple of years from now?
Oh, okay, brilliant. So yeah, one thing I will say is I try not to get bogged down into the philosophical details, if that makes sense. However, I think we can reasonably extrapolate from where we are with each of these systems. So when I say promptability, universal basic income, someone said, great idea, Ben Sturgis, yes, please. When I say promptability, all I mean is that as I say, it's difficult to get these systems to do what you want, and over time, research will find that it gets better. So if you could imagine any of the things that AI can do now in the next year to 5, what we see today is going to look very basic. So I like to imagine today's AI is like the Windows 98 of AI, right? It was great at the time. it's impossibly basic compared to where we're going to get. A lot of people are concerned about how this might be a threat to them, or how this might make things very difficult to, to run a business around, or whatever else. But actually, the way I see it is it creates a lot more opportunity than risk. And for those who are sort of willing and able to grab it with both hands and make the best of it, I think they'll do really well. Anything else? I'd love to chat universal basic income with someone at some time, but there you go.
Was super insightful, and you've had a lot of great comments here confirming that. I'm your biggest fan of the topic and of you, so I really enjoyed the session myself. Have you got any more questions, guys? If you do, you can fire up those questions in the chat or come off mute.
Prompt examples from these decks. Yes, I can. I can get you some prompt examples as well. But yeah, I'll go back through. Oh gosh, there's been more questions here than I realised. I'll go back through the chat and answer some questions directly. And as ever, I'm totally available. My virtual office door is open, so just at me on Teams or pop me an email if you see any examples that you found particularly inspiring. If you have any great ideas, then I'm all ears. And as I say, if you want to go even deeper, please come along at 1 o'clock.
A quick plug, yeah. Brad will be back with us at 1 o'clock, so I'm surely going to be looking forward for that session.
I'm going to need a coffee before it, I think.
Yeah. I'll just say again that we will share both of those sessions on Launchpad for you, so you can share those with friends and colleagues and clients if you are really interested in that. And yeah, if there is no more questions, we will see you at 1.
Cool. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Brad.
Bye.